What is a distribution? Well, let's say we have our variable, the thing we measure on which people can differ. Height's a variable, intelligence is a variable, creativity, that's a variable. They're all variables. Now, a distribution allows us to create a graph where we can see how often we get different levels of a particular variable. We can see the thing. So I'm going to use this example here of my six-sided dice. So I have my six-sided dice, and let's say I take my dice and I roll it 6,000 times. Now, what I'd see is that every time I roll that dice, I get a number, and I can add up how often I get different numbers, and I can actually plot this in a kind of graph called a histogram. So a histogram is a kind of graph where the x-axis across is the level, the value of the variable, whether you rolled a 1 or a 2 or a 3, and then the y-axis up, how tall the bar is the frequency, how often you saw a particular number. And so we can plot it here, and what we'll see here is this is actually what's called a uniform distribution, a flat distribution. Uniform, people work in offices, they have a uniform, they all dress the same. All of these are the same. Every single one of these outcomes is equally likely. That's a uniform distribution. Well, the cool thing about a distribution, this shape, is that the area under the distribution is equal to the probability. Every time I roll a dice, it's always going to be between 1 and 6. So it's always going to be 1 and 6. So the probability of it being between 1 and 6 is 100. So I add the probability. So each of those numbers comes up a 6 at the time. If I add up those probabilities, that's going to be 100% probability. But let's say, what's the probability of me getting a 1 over 2? Well, that is a third of the probability, but it's also a third of the area under the shape. So the area under the shape is equal to the probability. Now, that's a uniform distribution. What we often see in psychology and the other sciences is what's called a normal distribution. And a normal distribution is when the most common variable, the most common level of the variable is the average, the mean. And the further you move away from the mean, the fewer and fewer people there are, the fewer and fewer observations. Height is like that, intelligence is like that, creativity is like that. And so that is what statisticians mean, that is what scientists mean when they say distribution.